is there a situation going on where I have been incredibly, incredibly productive the entire time I've been inside and he is not? And so he set up his desk and he sits there in front of his computer and I don't know what he does. It's not supposed to be my business, but it's not equivalent. And so is somebody trying to charge him either rent or storage fees because he agreed to some sort of obligation and because he misrepresented that he and I are roommates? Then somehow I'm supposed to be using my productive labor and what I create and do in here as part of whatever obligations he set up. Well, let me just make sure you know I don't have any roommates. I live in this address. I have my own room. That was the agreement. He told me when I moved in, I'm not required to pay any rent, and there's no rent on this place. It's owned and it's part of a trust. That's what he told me. And I provided him with written information in February of last year about what I understood to be the terms of this living arrangement. It's been over 6 months. He never challenged it. So you don't have any legitimization or justification for saying that I personally, at this address, owe anybody anything. He's the one that told me that under Texas homestead law, if the man gambles and loses everything, then the woman is entitled to be able to stay in her place without getting thrown out because he was profligate. It's nothing about me having to be married to him. There was nothing about me having to service him or anybody else. And I've read enough the Texas homestead law to know that all of this is crap. If you got boys in this area that are doing some sort of a derivative agreement or some sort of illicit bidding on some contract and trying to use this address or trying to use the address of this building, too fucking bad. There's nothing legitimate. I don't want to hear any. Turn it off. Keep it out in the other room. You understand? This room, this bounded space here, I have an indicator right outside of my door. I have closed it off. I've marked it off. On the other side of that line is my room. Whatever's on out there, that's it. You want to say some shit about every time I eat, I transfer stock? Why? Because I go through the common area? No. You're cutting that off too. I already told you, all of this shit is to be put in an interest-bearing escrow account. It's been that way, actually, since November of 2017. It's in writing. Since November of 2017. Anything is to be put in an interest-bearing escrow account. I affirmed that in the beginning of 2018. I affirmed that again last fall. I believe I have on record I've affirmed it again this year as well. And I've put it into a video that's been published online. Nothing gets transferred licitly. Nothing gets transferred that's allowed to be credited or acknowledged until somebody meets with me in person and we get the appropriate paperwork. I meant it. You need to produce documentation that you had justification to do anything at all with my identity that anybody else has claimed that they've been entitled to do. Period. I know if it does exist, you haven't provided it to me in the time frame you needed to. Do you need me to work with you around an understanding of what the credit relationship is, or a need for some sort of addressing of the accrued fees and fines associated with the defaults? You need to meet with me in person and you need to produce the documentation, because I contend it's all illegal anyway. So we're not even talking about that. And the longer you persist, the more it compounds. I think that there's a realization that it's at that kind of a critical point. So for the record, let me just remind you, nothing gets charged to me in here, period. Nothing. No rent, no fine, no storage fee. I don't want to hear any crap about how I have to perform to pay my rent. No. A. B. I'm the only one in here. Nobody else has a claim in here. C. Nothing gets transferred. Nothing gets transferred. I made it clear several times. Even if in the course of me legitimately acquiring recoveries or being in a position to be the recipient of default on important entities up to and including corporate persons in the state of Texas and or entities doing business with the state of Texas that ended up defaulting or ended up getting busted for crime or that were a part of open report numbers that have themselves defaulted and hence have defaulted on the sureties that were connected to those, all of it has been put in an interest bearing escrow account. Period. None of it's been released to anybody. Anybody trying to draw on it or use it is going to have to deal with that. You weren't allowed to. It's not legally possible to. There is absolutely no jurisdiction under which you can draw down on it without meeting with me in person and establishing and verifying what that jurisdiction is. Now, you can say, well, we swapped you out or you're being used as a proxy. No, you don't have the right to do that. None of that was ever legitimate. That was part of the basis of the original claims. Just so you know, going all the way back to simulating Syrian process at a domestic violence shelter in Chicago. None of it was ever legitimate. None of it was ever constitutional or legal. And you need to produce paperwork. Acknowledge for whoever approved whatever you thought you were going to get away with. Every day you don't, unfortunately, it does not accrue to your merit. If you're going to try to do something like mess with my library account, I already put that on the record, just like with all your other little liens and stuff like that. You want to do that thing? Fine. You're going to put a freeze on my account so I can't pay it and I can't respond in enough time. Do you know what that tells me? It's in an interest-bearing escrow account along with it. That obviously when you interfered with me being able to go to the library and check up on the standards manual around licit distribution, and you had already taken it out and taken it off the list, you understood you were involved in crime. So you put a freeze on everything and put it into an interest-bearing escrow account pending its evaluation as evidence in a criminal proceeding. You understand? I am not the respondent, and I am not going to defend you if you are. That is not what this is about. Thank you very much. Make sure you let that sink in today. Let there be no misunderstanding.